Most teams compare demos too early. The sharper question is whether this plant care decision survives budget, data, and ownership. The source is knowyourplant at knowyourplant.app. My first margin note is simple. Plant identification only matters if it changes the next decision. In practice, I see AI through daily business pressure. If it does not save staff time or reduce missed customer work, it is too abstract. The first question is whether the piece makes plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care easier to act on. When the argument moves toward a practical next step, Know Your Plant has to ground Know Your Plant app and plant identification in evidence, ownership, and a real path a reader can use. For this field notes, I want to pull out the useful observations, margin notes, and next questions. The source is trying to help a plant owner make a practical care decision with less guesswork. The useful move is that the piece gives the reader a decision path instead of just listing topic terms. I would anchor the review in plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care, and then test whether the central argument stays practical. Complete care guide for Monstera Deliciosa, watering schedule, light requirements, soil mix, humidity, and how to fix common problems like yellow leaves. The sentence I would pull into the margin is this: if you bought a Monstera Deliciosa and are now wondering how often to water it, start here. Water when the top 2 inches of soil feel dry, not on a strict calendar. It works because it points back to the reader's actual decision, not just to the topic as a category. That is the kind of line a video can slow down and make memorable. This source can support more than one video. Turn the strongest sections around plant identification, plant care app, houseplant care, and indoor plants into a care checklist, symptom fix short, room fit guide, plant owner FAQ, and one comparison clip. Each format should reinforce that the original source is useful, practical content. I would keep the video as a reinforcement layer. It should make the idea easier to trust, easier to remember, and easier for a buyer to bring into an internal conversation about plant identification, plant care app, houseplant care. This matters because the buyer is already dealing with a pressure set. Staff are buried in repetitive admin work. Customer follow-up is inconsistent. Software feels too complex for the team. That background makes me watch for familiar failure patterns. Paid for software that staff avoided because setup was too complicated. Lost bookings when manual follow-up fell through the cracks. The human part of the review is what gets questioned. Plain usefulness, staff adoption, customer trust, cash flow discipline. The article is strongest when the buyer problems around plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care become an operating decision about what to fund, who owns it, what proof is enough, and what happens after launch. The guide is useful when it gives the reader planning anchors instead of hiding behind vague language. Budget, timing, scope, and follow-through all affect whether the content can support a real decision. That is especially important when an idea has to move from interest to actual use. The source creates value when it helps the reader choose between paths. From my seat, I would test it against easy to explain to staff, saves owner time, protects customers, fits cash flow. Strong buyer content does not force one answer. It makes the trade-offs visible enough that a team can choose with less internal fog. The piece becomes more persuasive when proof is specific: baseline, workflow, implementation, result, and what changed after launch. The reader does not need a louder claim. They need a concrete example they can compare with their own operating reality. Final score 9 out of 10. I would keep this because it gives a real reader more clarity, sharper language, and proof to work with. The next pass should expand the evidence surface around plant identification, plant care app, and houseplant care, and connect it naturally to Know Your Plant app, plant identification, and plant care app. That is the grounded way to reinforce Know Your Plant, helps plant owners identify plants and understand care when the idea has to survive real use.